We want more security, more stability, better spouses, better friends, bigger houses, nicer cars, longer vacations. But how often do we ever feel like we have enough? Hello and welcome to Sunday Morning with Hope Valley Church. I'm Pastor Sam, the lead pastor here at Hope Valley, and today we're covering the fourth part of what is a six-part series on the topic of worship. Now, starting today and really for the next three lessons, we're going to shift the angle on this topic and look at our hearts. And specifically, we're going to be learning some of the characteristics we need to cultivate in our own hearts to become true, authentic worshipers of God who worship Him freely and not out of a sense of, tradition or obligation, but from a genuine love and appreciation for who God is and what He's done. Cultivate is such an important word to use here because that is what we have to do in our hearts. The same way that a farmer or gardener has to, put in time and effort to grow a healthy crop, you and I need to do a similar, consistent kind of work internally to nurture the growth that God is creating in us through His Spirit. So as we look at the heart of a worshiper, the first thing we're going to focus on today is that the heart of a worshiper is a thankful heart. As we talk about cultivating things in our hearts, thankfulness is one of those things we're going to have to cultivate. And to understand thankfulness, I want to talk for a moment about the difference between being satisfied and being content. Because it's a misunderstanding of these two conditions that really plays into a problem we have with our thankfulness. Satisfaction means that you've got something that you wanted. You had a need, it got met, and now you're satisfied. So satisfaction is something that comes after you've received something that you didn't have. But contentment is something else. Rather than coming after receiving, contentment comes before receiving. In fact, contentment is something that is, really exists without you receiving anything at all. And that's because being content isn't about getting what you want. It's really about wanting what you already have. If you think about it, the kind of thankfulness that we're used to is really the kind of thankfulness that comes from being satisfied. But my challenge for you today is to understand that the kind of thankfulness that God is looking for is the kind of thankfulness that comes from being content. And if you can learn that kind of thankfulness, then you can actually be thankful in all things, which, by the way, is exactly what Scripture tells us to be. Thankful in all things. If you think back to when you were a kid or, if you've raised kids yourself, then you know that one of the common questions kids are always asking is the question, what's next, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you give a child, where you take them, what you do for them. They will be satisfied for, maybe 5 minutes. And then they're going to ask you, what's next? Because children are almost never content with what they already have. The world is new, everything is exciting, there's adventure to be had, and so they want to know what's next. Feed them a cookie, they want another cookie. Give them a present, they want to open another present. Take them somewhere awesome, and before you're even done, they want to know where you're taking them next. With maybe a few moments of exception for a child, nothing you give them is ever enough. And we adults aren't much better, are we? Sure, we grow up, but a lot of that same attitude still remains. We want more money, more happiness, more love, more recognition at work, more appreciation from our families, more significance, more control over our lives. We want more security, more stability, better spouses, better friends, bigger houses, nicer cars, longer vacations. I mean, I could go on, right? But how often do we ever feel like we have enough? Would you even know it if you did have enough? Or are your eyes always focused on what's next? Now, I'm not saying that we're like that all the time, or that we're never satisfied, but I think it's undebatable that we all spend too much time wanting to be satisfied and nowhere near enough time being content. And that is our problem. And so thankfulness, right? True contentment is something we're going to have to cultivate because it's not going to grow naturally. Like the first step in doing this is establishing a habit of discipline, of focusing on the good things we already have in God. Look at this passage from Psalm chapter 9. It's in verse 1 through 10. It says, I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all the marvelous things you have done. I will be filled with joy because of you. I will sing praises to your name, O Most High, for my enemies retreated. They staggered and they died when you appeared. For you have judged in my favor from your throne. You have judged with fairness. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have erased their names forever. The enemy is finished. In endless ruins, the cities you uprooted are now forgotten. But the Lord reigns forever, executing judgment from his throne. He will judge the world with justice and rule the nations with fairness. The Lord is a shelter for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, O Lord, do not abandon those who search for you. So in this passage, David has written this song that talks about how God loves us and protects us, how he provides shelter and justice for the oppressed, how he judges and punishes evil, how he never abandons us, and that he has the power and the authority to back it all up. These were all references to real things that David had experienced in his life, that he personally saw God do. And now in Psalm 9, we see the song lyric that David wrote and gave others to sing so that they could take time to reflect and be content and thankful for what God had already done and where he already had them. That is what we should be doing. We need to stop constantly looking at what's next, and we need to stand still and look at what is. Think about what God has already done. Take time to be thankful before looking to be satisfied. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 through 13, the Apostle Paul talked about how he had learned to do this. He wrote, not that I, was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ, who gives me strength. Now look, Paul says here in verse 13 that it was actually Jesus who had empowered him to be content in all circumstances. And you may be hearing what I'm saying today and thinking, Pastor Sam, I don't know how I can be content in the situation I'm in. And I get it, okay? I get it. But listen, Paul wrote this from a Roman prison cell. Do you really think that was an easy place for him to be content? But be encouraged. Because Paul didn't say that he learned to be content through his sheer force of will, right? He said that Jesus taught him, empowered him to learn contentment. And that means that Jesus can do that for you, and he can do it for me too. So let me ask you this question. Aren't you tired of the chase? Aren't you tired of what's next? Aren't you tired of never being satisfied? Of never, nothing ever is enough for you? Are you tired of that? What if you could be happy now? Thankful now? At peace now? It's actually possible, but you have to give up the chase, and you need to change what you're looking at. Are you looking at what you don't have, or are you looking at what you do have? Like, there will always be something you don't have. The question is, do you need it? So here's an assignment I have for you today that will begin to help you with this, and it's real simple. I want you to write down 3 things in your life that you are thankful to God for. And then I want you to keep it with you this week. Wherever you find yourself asking what's next, I want you to look at this list and consciously thank God for each one of these 3 things individually. Like, it may seem simple, but you know what? Gardening isn't very complicated. It's just hard work that requires consistency. We need a different perspective. Frankly, we need to grow up. We need to stop being the child that is never satisfied with what we already have. By cultivating thankfulness in our hearts and learning to be content, we can learn to have a more mature perspective on life and our present circumstances, and we can become the true worshipers of God that he has called us to be. So to help you out a bit more, I have a couple questions that I'd like you to pray about this week. Don't try to answer these questions fast. Just bring these questions to God in your prayer time and spend time contemplating them. The answers are probably not going to be obvious. The first question is this: what need in your life do you feel is never met? The second question is, how has God maybe already met that need for you without you noticing? All right. Well, I am really thankful that you've taken this time today, and I pray that the Holy Spirit will bless you with the awareness and the understanding and the peace that comes from God, so that you can rest in his peace and his love each and every day. All right. Well, we love you. Be blessed.
We are so glad you have joined us today. To learn more about Hope Valley Church and get access to free resources, just go to www.hopevalley.church. There, you will also find links to connect with us on Facebook and Instagram, as well as links to our podcasts, now available on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please take a moment to like and subscribe so you can stay up with new videos coming out every week. Hope Valley is a church based in Winchester, Virginia that meets in homes around the region. So if you'd like to find out more about home churches, how they work, and how to locate one near you, just go to hopevalley.church/house. Thanks again for joining us, and may God bless you today.